Hey everybody, it's Mark Schultz here, and I am live today, coming to you from Flying Cloud Airport. And right over my shoulder here, I'm here at Executive Aviation on Flying Cloud Airport. And Flying Cloud Airport is a reliever airport, which is about 10 miles from downtown Minneapolis and Minneapolis, Minnesota. I just happened to be here, and I know there's been a lot of talk in the news out there about Minneapolis, Minnesota, but it's about 10 miles, 11 miles northeast of where I am right now. But Flying Cloud Airport is an airport which is a reliever airport in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area, and it's part of the Metropolitan Airport Commission. But just some interesting facts about this airport is in 1941, this airport was put into place. It was a grass strip, and it was used for training of Navy pilots during World War II, and became pretty famous. And they used it for a number of years until 1948, when the Metropolitan Airport Commission actually took it over. And I'm not sure when the tower. It's a controlled field, and I have airplanes. I think they're training flights. Over my shoulder here right now. We have a helicopter over my shoulder here right now, and but I wanted to do the broadcast out here today from a business aviation airport. We've been focusing on business aviation and this sector, but I think the tower came up here in '63 or '68 or something like that. But this is an airport which is actually pretty busy, and in its heyday, in the central part of United States, they had about 500,000 operations a year in this airport, and that made it actually the second largest airport in the middle of the United States, central United States, only second to Chicago O'Hare at the time. And there's two parallel runways out here. There's 10 and 28 right and left, and then there's 18 and 36, which is the cross runway that's used out here for business aviation and for general aviation. And we're at an elevation of 906 feet above sea level. And this is, quite a busy little airport. And I told you it was about 500,000 operations a year in its heyday. But today, right before COVID, it was about 120,000 operations a year, which made it, a lot smaller than what it was in its heyday. But it's still an important reliever airport in the Minneapolis area. And so, we have business aviation here over my shoulder here. We have a King Air, and this morning when I was here, I saw some different aircraft that were taking off. There's some helicopters over here that were, doing some helicopter operations, and I saw a couple of business jets taking off this morning. And here over my shoulder, we have a Beach Jet 400 over there, old Hawker airplane. And, so we got a lot of activity going on here. But I wanted to focus on business aviation here again today, because business aviation is really an important part of aviation out there today. And, what is business aviation? Business aviation is really general aviation, which is used for business. So it's really just general aviation, Part 91, operations. There are some Part 135 charter operations, that exist out there. And business aviation is the use of aircraft like this King Air or this Beach Jet over here for use in business. And the reason we've been wanting to talk about business aviation is because right now in the industry today, we've been really hit significantly by economic impact aviation has. And in April, we had a really significant hit in aviation. And all sectors of aviation were down, quite a bit, really down substantially. And business aviation, I think, was down to about 50% of its normal operations over 2019. So in 2019, they had a certain level, and then in April, it was down to about 50% of what it was, 1 year ago. But the great news is that by Memorial Day, by a month ago, many areas of the United States were reporting that business aviation had actually been almost up to normal levels of what they were 1 year ago. Now, that's not exactly where it is today, and that's what I wanted to talk about here today, is that in North America today, according to WingX, and they're a statistics company which provides information and stats about general aviation, or about aviation in general, and they reported that in the United States, that operations were at about 70% of what they were just 1 year ago in 2019 here in North America. All right. And I got an aircraft taken off over there next to me. I think there's some training aircraft that are doing touch and goes and things next to us. But we're seeing operations that are about 70% of 1 year ago in North America today. And we're also seeing significant operations in Europe and growing in business aviation growing in Europe. And the reason that's important is because in the world today, the total operations that we're seeing, about 90% of operations that we're seeing today are coming from North America and Europe, all right? And there are different areas that are more significant or that have grown more than others. Like, for example, Zurich and some places like that are up over other places of business aviation. But definitely we're seeing the recovery in aviation happening in business aviation, quite significantly here in North America. And that's very, very significant because commercial aviation, dropped pretty far, right? We dropped down to maybe 10% of operations, and in some different areas, we're seeing 40 to 50% in commercial aviation. But in business aviation in North America, we've seen a rise already to almost 70% of operations of what we saw 1 year ago today. Now, why are we talking about this? Okay, because it's important that as a business that we're continuing to evaluate our business and we're looking at what can we do in order to be successful in these new times, these difficult times that we have ahead of us. We all know the landscape of aviation is changing, all right? And as a business owner, we all need to reevaluate our businesses, and we need to say, what are we doing, all right? Now, here's a problem, is that if you're an MRO, for example, that only does, wide body aircraft, for example, you're basically, at the mercy initially of what are you doing to support, overhaul of those wide body aircraft or maintenance of those wide body aircraft. But for those businesses that have the ability to shift and to be able to look at what they're doing, we need to be looking at how can we shift to the sectors where there is positive activity, all right? And business aviation is one of those places where there's positive activity. And so my encouragement to all of you is that if you have a business and if you are able to shift and if you are able to move into the areas where there is an increase in activity in aviation, you should do that. You should look at how can I pick this up? Now, initially you might say, oh, how can we do that? Our business isn't set up to do that. Well, you have a couple of different options. One is that can your business ride out the storm for the next 12 to 18 to 24 months? And if you can, well, then maybe you can stay focused on what you're doing. But if your business can't ride out the storm, and if you're going to be out of business in 12 to 18 to 24 months, then you better be looking at what alternatives are if you intend to stay in business. Now, even some of the businesses out there, that were trying to respond to the COVID-19, they were trying to respond to how do we do certain things like building face masks or things like that, and or respirators. And so what that proves, though, is that a business can adopt to the needs, around you. And so we need to be considering whether we can adopt to the increased activity in aviation. We've seen an increase in aviation in cargo. We've seen an increase in aviation, in business aviation since the COVID activity has happened. And so, we as a whole need to be looking at what can we do for our businesses to be able to address that market. So, super important thing for us to do. The NBAA reports that, prior to COVID, that there was approximately an impact, that business aviation had an impact of approximately $200 billion, to the industry. And so that means there's a lot of money out there. And so, you need to look at whether or not your business can make use of that or not. So you have some helicopter operations here. I'm not certain if it's in view or not, but I think we have some training operations that are happening here. Looks like a Robinson up there. So there's a lot of different things that continue to happen in business aviation. And I want to really, really encourage you to take a look at whether you can be part of that. Where's your software that you have, or where are your parts and materials, and where do you operate? What kind of repairs and maintenance do you do? Now, maybe your business just isn't set up to do that. And maybe you can weather the storm, the economic storm. But if you can't, then you better be looking at places in aviation where you actually can. Moving into modifications that support, cargo operations, or, I know that there's predictions that starting in July, that there'll be some additional increase in 135 or in charter, operations. And so maybe you have the opportunity to be able to support, charter, or maybe you have the opportunity to support Part 91, general aviation operations, or parts and materials, from those spaces. So all of us need to be looking at our businesses, and we need to be saying, if we're going to stay in business, what are we going to do? All right. One of the things that's really super important for any business. Got another airplane taking off over there alongside of me. Yep. So one of the really important things that we need to do in all of our businesses is we need to assess what our business model is, who's our markets, who are our verticals, and what are we doing, to be able to stay successful in that business. So if we look at commercial aviation, it's down, it's beginning to come up. We're starting to see a lot of recovery happening. We're expecting in the months of July and August that there's going to be more leisure travel, there's going to be more passenger travel, in the commercial space. But we all know that it's going to take time for it to recover. Now, let's talk for a minute about why business aviation, is impacted. I know some of it's obvious, but let's just talk about it for a minute. So, business aviation was impacted because a lot of the smaller jets and things like that, people found that they could use those, and we weren't impacted so much by, all the need for social distancing, or, and what's been reported is that operators of their own aircraft were the segments which began to come back, more quickly. And we're going to start to see more, Part 135 charter operations and things like that are going to happen in July and August. And so that'll be the next piece that'll start to come up. So operators of their own aircraft, and then basically charter operations, or, fractional jet operations, things like that. We're going to see more and more of that, really increasing and taking off. And one of the things that we know, though, is that, like, for example, here is an FBO back here, Executive Aviation behind me. And one thing that all FBOs have had to do is they've had to address their requirements for cleanliness and disinfecting and social distancing, and they're all having to, like everybody else, wear masks and make certain that they have shields that protect customers, and they're having to disinfect aircraft on a regular basis, and they're having to ensure that any kind of catering operations are done in a healthy manner. And cars, there's some rental cars sitting here next to me right there, and rental cars have to be disinfected properly. And so all of these operations have been affected just like any other operations, and they've had to put in procedures which are basically addressing the concerns that the public has, in order to be able to re-engage and to be able to use the services of these executive aviation operations. But they are definitely coming back. Nearly a month or two ago, all the major organizations started to address that and started to put those procedures in place so that they could continue to come back. So it's really great that we're seeing, a solid operation in business aviation. And so, again, if you are an operation out there that can leverage that, you definitely need to be thinking about how you can be somebody who leverages business aviation revenues and grabs your piece of that 200 billion, that exists out there, and jump in and be part of business aviation, whether it be software, parts, materials, operations, all the things that revolve around those operations. So listen, we've been talking about business aviation for the last 5 or 6 weeks, because we know that it's an important sector of aviation out there within our community. And so these broadcasts that I want to thank you so much for people joining in and participating in have been watched by people all around the world. And we're trying to create an enthusiasm and create an energy, and to get people really engaged in the recovery in aviation. And so, I want to challenge you that as a leader in the industry, that you look at the things around you, the factors that affect you, and what can you do to understand the things that are affecting and are around you. Look for new business opportunities, and find ways and places that you can engage in aviation in the spaces where it's growing, right? And if you're one of those pieces of aviation that are, struggling with how do we adapt, look, I wish I could be as enthusiastic all the time as what I want to be about commercial aviation, but it's going to struggle. It's been struggling, and it's going to struggle. But I know that if we don't put extra effort into the industry, it will not recover as fast. If we didn't put as much effort into making the flying public feel safe about what they were doing and making aircraft safe and returning to operations, people would not be comfortable flying. And so it's important that we, in fact, have enthusiasm and put the things in place which can continue operations and which can make people feel safe about flying. And for our regulators out there, people that are opening borders and hotels and things like that, that's such a super important part of the whole industry for us to be able to go back to leisure travel and to business travel. I had to fly out here from Seattle. My normal place that I live is in Seattle, Washington. And so I took a flight out here. I was on Alaska Airlines, and they did a fantastic job of making the people feel comfortable. The airplane was only about maybe, I'm going to guess, about 50% full, but they were practicing safe procedures. I noticed that the aircraft was very clean when I got in on it, and everybody on the airplane was wearing a mask. And I felt safe traveling. I felt safe going to the airport. I felt safe traveling, and came out here, and I stayed the first couple nights I was out here in a hotel, and I felt safe in the hotel. I didn't have a problem, with going to the hotel. I felt like the operations they had were safe. Just for those of you that might want to know, is that when I went to the hotel, they normally had a breakfast bar, but they didn't have that, of course. They asked me what I wanted for breakfast, and they delivered it to my room in a bag. It was like a continental breakfast in a bag. But what I'm trying to say is that people are finding ways to adapt to the new environment that we have, and as we go, we need to continue to look at how do we provide a safer environment and a better environment, and one which addresses all the concerns that we have around us. That's going to help us to continue to grow. As leaders in the industry, we need to put our best efforts forward, our best enthusiasms, understand what's happening around us, make adjustments, stay positive, and keep our businesses functioning in these really, really difficult times. Hey, I wanted to come to you live today and talk to you about business aviation, but we had a really super good response from one of our recent broadcasts that we did with a company called Bluetail. And there are a couple of guys who have a long time in the business aviation industry that came out with a piece of software which addresses the needs for record keeping and keeping the value of your assets up. And if we're going to continue to use more and more business aircraft, we definitely are going to want to have aircraft that maintain value and that are maintained well, and we have good record keeping. And so that software company has done a great job of addressing, those needs. I've actually done interviews and broadcasts with a lot of different companies over this time that address business aviation, but that was a good one. And we had a lot of positive response from it. And so one of the things that we're going to do is I'm going to do a little throwback Friday, not a throwback Thursday, but a throwback Friday. And we're going to replay that broadcast here today when I get done. And so, if you missed it, watch the broadcast, and we'll be here answering questions, during that time. But I'm going to run that broadcast. And so I wanted to thank you for joining me out here at the airport. And, I got another aircraft taking off over here. I got a business jet taking off right behind me here. Not sure if you can see it, but it's taxiing out right now. Or it's actually just landing. It looks like it just landed and they're taxiing in after landing. So, there are operations. I got a helicopter over my shoulder. I got a business jet. And it's just fun to be able to come out here and to be able to see activity in business aviation. And I want to tell you is that stay positive, get engaged, and let's together create recovery in aviation. Watch this rebroadcast, a throwback of one of our last broadcasts. And I'm going to be looking forward to seeing you again next week when we continue to talk about recovery in aviation. Thanks for being with me today. I want to tell you, fair winds and following seas, and have a great day and enjoy this broadcast.
Hey everybody, it's Mark Schultz here, and we are live on LinkedIn with another Recovery in Aviation. And this particular one today, we're focusing on business aviation. I'm here with my co-host, Larry Little. Good morning, Larry. How are you?
Hey, Mark. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. We're here in Seattle. We're broadcasting from the Seattle area, and it's a great day in Seattle. We're really happy to be online. Hey, we have this LinkedIn live broadcast today on Recovery in Aviation. And Larry, you know how important it is that we focus on recovery. And I know you like telling our audience, your perspective on that.
Well, Mark, there's so much negative press. Even today, every day there's more, negative press about how long it's going to take. Is it 2 years, 5 years? But here, we have the opportunity to, come twice a week and really have a forward-looking, positive. How do we flatten the curve on recovery? And that's what
we are having conversations every day, all week long, with leaders in aviation. And I tell you that there are segments of aviation that are moving faster than others. And I see people that are moving their companies forward further and faster than ever before because they are taking the lead. They are leaning forward and they are moving toward recovery in aviation. And so, hey, we're doing this live broadcast today. We're going to have some guests here that are experts in subject matter experts in business aviation. And so our focus today is going to be on business aviation, and we're looking forward to having them, on. This is a live broadcast, and so we do have the opportunity for live questions and answers. And so write down in the comments below. If you put a question in the comments below, we see it here on our studio, and we're able to engage and have a conversation with you. So during the course of the broadcast, hey, reach out to us, ask your questions, because we're going to have a good dynamic session for the next 30, 45 minutes. We're looking forward to it. Live broadcast, put your comments in below. Yeah, Larry.
Hey, Mark, I think you said it, but, for the past few weeks, we've been so focused on commercial. And I was just really looking forward to this discussion this morning about business aviation. And over the next 30, 45 minutes, I think we're going to learn a lot about the business aviation environment. So it's going to be a fun discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a couple of guests here with us today. On board here, we have, hey guys, how are you today?
Doing well. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Larry.
Stuart, Illian, and we have Stuart, Illian, and Roberto. Glad to have you guys on board with us.
Thanks for having us.
Nice being here.
Excellent. Hey guys, where are you located today?
So we're in Phoenix, Arizona, at one of our downtown offices. Should hit about 108 degrees here today. So not quite Seattle, but
no. Yeah, Larry said we're probably going to hit 60 today here. I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah,
60 and miss today.
Rub it in.
Yeah, I know. Hey, but you got something that we don't. Listen, you probably got fair skies today, right?
Always.
Beautiful skies. Listen, all of us here are actually pilots. Larry is more active than me right now. Larry, you think they'll be going out flying today with the weather we have?
Mark, I hope to do my first test tryout flight on a Cessna 182 this afternoon. I think that's
great.
Fantastic. Yeah, Larry's going to go for his high performance rating here. That's great. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But you guys always have fair skies down there. So, hey, you might have high temperatures, but you have great general aviation, business aviation, flying weather. So we're jealous about that. Hey, listen, great to have you guys on here. And you guys are with a company called Bluetail. Stuart, what is your role in the company?
So I'm a co-founder along with Roberto here. So my primary role is sales and business development. I do some work on the customer success and support side and help with some operational things. Although we're in the process of maybe bringing somebody on to take care of that role on our behalf.
And yeah. Roberto, how about you? Yeah.
Well, first of all, Stuart and I met 25 years ago at Apple, and we're excited to be back together again with this venture. But currently, I'm shepherding the Bluetail brand, the marketing, and of course, building the platform.
Excellent. So, as I see it, just for our viewers, is Stuart, your focus is on aviation and on the subject matter expertise in aviation, and Roberto, your background is technology and platform. If we could sum it up that way, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, more simply, I bring the money in, he spends it.
Yeah, all right, great. Yeah, I want Roberto's job. Yeah. Good. Hey, listen, Bluetail, you have this tagline which says Bluetail aims to modernize aircraft records management, and we're going to have some discussion about that a little bit later on. But right now, I want to a little bit focus on the industry, and general aviation has been an important part of my life since I was small, and all the way up till now, and all four of us, it's really been important to us. And if you take a look at business aviation as a whole, business aviation is a really, really important part of our flight infrastructure. Out there today, about 500 airports, you can fly commercial airlines into, but about 5,000 airports, are business aviation kind of airports. And, that's really a big impact. And so for us, we have an opportunity to engage in a market which really is significantly broader than those which are in the commercial aviation space. All right. So I see you guys positioned actually quite nicely. And as I kind of jump into that, we want to talk a little bit about the importance of the industry. Now, Stuart, you have background specifically in general and business aviation, right? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's correct. So I started out in general aviation. I did my flight training at the University of North Dakota in the 80s, ultimately transferred to Ohio State, where I graduated with an aviation and a business degree. So jumped in and out of tech and aviation. But in 2003, when I was still up in the Bay Area, California, we actually purchased a flight school in Southern California that was doing in-aircraft type ratings. So really got me square into business aviation, because we were training corporate operators, 135 flight departments, owner pilots. Did that for a number of years, and then actually moved on to another training company doing a similar thing called ProFlight, which is now Textron Aviation Flight Safety Training. So I did the training piece for probably 12 plus years, got real familiar with business aviation, whether it be through the customers, trade shows, that sort of thing, and then ultimately worked for a 135 operator for about a year, and then after that, just been doing some various software projects. So yeah, about 20 years, pure years of business aviation. Feel I know it pretty well.
That's really great. And the business aviation space is so important, because these statistics on the screen here right now are from the MBAA. And, they say that there's about 1 million business aviation jobs out there. And I suppose if you included all of general aviation, there's a tremendous amount more. But, that's a space that we have a big opportunity to impact through business aviation out there today, with 1 million, jobs out there. And then basically the financial or economic impact of that is MBAA also reports that there's over $2 billion of impact from business aviation out there because of business aviation. And so, it's great to see companies like yourself and all of us being able to engage in that, because it really has a big impact. Guys, we've been looking at the industry right now and what's been happening in the industry. And Stuart, you had a few thoughts or ideas, down there in your region. What's happening down in your area with respect to business aviation? What kind of activity are you seeing?
Well, of course, the bottom dropped out, a few months ago. We were part of that, and that's been really tough. And, I talked to a lot of people, whether it's in the training space or operators, FBOs, and everybody really experienced kind of the same thing. But more recently, we've seen some really positive signs. I was looking at some data points this morning about Scottsdale Airport, which is our home-based airport, SDL, having a larger share of some of the new flights that have been taking place in business aviation. So we're seeing that activity. I mean, it's funny, you look for all kinds of clues. I just look up the sky. I live on downwind for Sky Harbor, so I can just track the amount of aircraft coming in, just sitting out at night, and barbecuing. So, you can slowly but surely see these positive signs, traffic on the freeway. So definitely some positive things. We're getting calls from people here locally. So slowly but surely, we've seen, I think, a really good uptick in this particular area.
Yeah, and Larry,
I think that's really interesting. And on the commercial side, I think the impact of Corona was like 95% of reduction in flights, and business aviation just wasn't hit quite that hard. I mean, the numbers I saw were about 50% reduction in flights. So right. It's been a kind of interesting comparison or dynamic between the two domains.
Yeah, so we really saw business aviation fall less than commercial aviation. And I also saw there was some statistics reported that even just last weekend over Memorial Day, that the traffic in business aviation was about normal of what we saw a year ago at this point in time. And so there are certain pieces of this that we're seeing really some amazing recovery that's already occurring within business aviation. Now, listen, I watched a webinar recently where there was a lot of experts in the industry on that webinar. and they were saying, look, it's tough. We're struggling right now because we're having to deal with all the same issues that the commercial airlines are, like personal protective equipment and, cleaning procedures and food and all those things that we know have been happening in the commercial aviation are also affecting business aviation. All right. And so, yeah, they're affected by all those same things. But, Larry, you had some thoughts about maybe why people are shifting over to business aviation instead of, commercial. Do you think we're going to see an increase in activity in business aviation?
Well, Marcus, a couple of things that, thoughts that come to mind is, first off, business aviation hasn't been hit as hard, right? We just talked about that. But I think going forward, there might be a tremendous opportunity for growth. I mean, and Stuart and Roberto, what do you guys see in the future as far as, I think people are more willing to get on a private or business jet than they would be on a commercial airplane.
Well, I think we talked a little bit about that before this call. Just that some of the reports, I think there was a report out of FlexJet, that they're getting calls from people that were flying commercial, and they have the wherewithal and the resources to do it. So they're talking to people they've never talked to before, and I'm hearing similar stories from some operators that, okay, it was really bad initially, but now that that's kind of subsided, we're getting calls from people that had never considered private aviation before. So that will have the whole ecosystem, whether it's the OEMs, all the support companies, and ultimately folks like Bluetail that will hopefully be supporting those aircraft. So some very positive signs that I think long term we're going to see more, maybe accelerated growth. Not initially. It'll take some time. Let's don't kid ourselves, but that's all positive as it relates to the future.
Yeah, I think one other thought is that these companies that have corporate jets, they might kind of flow down who gets to fly on that corporate jet. Maybe you don't have to be a VP. Maybe at the director level you're flying the corporate jet now.
That's exactly true. And it's funny when this all happened, I was immediately anticipating, because selling an aircraft is one of our use cases, that we would see a huge uptick in the available inventory, right? I thought like in 08 where it doubled like within the first few months. That hasn't happened. Yeah. And everybody's kind of waiting, and it's not going to happen because people are hanging on for the reasons you just described, Larry, and that's really positive. So
yeah, I think we're looking at a really big opportunity, for a company like yours and for other companies that operate in this business aviation space. I mean, look at, over 1 million jobs, $200 billion worth of, economic impact. And we're seeing that this sector did not drop as hard, and it's coming back faster. Now, for those of us that are in North America, I have people on this broadcast right now that are from all around the world. But from those of us in North America, we're seeing a recovery in business aviation faster than what we are in other parts of the world. Europe is seeing, a recovery, but it's a little slower than what's happening in the U.S. South America is seeing a recovery, but it's also, again, a little bit slower than it is in the U.S. But, what we're definitely seeing, I just want to say this one more time, is that the industry fell. It didn't fall as hard as commercial aviation, and it's recovering faster. So I really think that represents a tremendous opportunity for us that want to lean forward in business and to be able to move things forward. Now, but let's talk about this for a minute, guys. With your company, Bluetail, how has that really impacted sort of your plans and moving forward? How's the economic conditions impacted your company specifically?
Yeah, so a couple quick thoughts, and if Roberto wants to add something. Well, first of all, we launched officially on May 21st. So we launched the business aviation company, right after, let's call it the crash. If that's not the poster child for one of your success stories, I'm not really sure what is. So we're doing our part, but all kidding aside, we've seen some great reception to our product, our messaging, our brand. And then, we've been closing some deals. We've gotten some positive press. So in our minds, we feel good about maybe being one small piece of that recovery. We hope to hire some people this year. And I've got friends that have contacted me, that great people that have been displaced. So again, if we can play one small role in helping bring some of those people into Bluetail, and pick up some of that slack, that's all really good stuff. Did you want to add anything to that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us on this call have been through a lot of slowdowns in the economy and crashes, and as you can tell, Stuart's the guy who has all the aviation background. I do not. I come from the software and the SaaS world, and this is the best time for companies to really invest in digital transformation. And Stuart and I think this was a great time to start this company and get it launched. Disruption happens in crisis, and what we wanted to do with our product was take aircraft records and make them more visual, make them more connected, make them more collaborative. And we think it's a great time to invest in technology in all your companies, whoever's listening out there.
So, gentlemen, you know, we said at the beginning that your company was really modernizing aircraft records management. So, you know, listen, for the people out there right now, that sounds pretty boring, isn't it? Hey, wait a minute. I didn't just say that, did I?
Well, you said it.
Tell us what's the importance of records management. Why is that something that's important right now? What's happening?
So, well, it's interesting because, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways of answering it. I think maybe the simplest way is just to give you a little bit of a thumbnail from a call I took on Friday. I closed the deal on Friday. I won't mention the person's name. PC-12 owner-operator, great guy, had been kind of following us in the press. And, you know, we talked about this at a simple level, the fact that he's got all of his paper records sitting at his service provider, you know. So for him, just to spend a couple bucks just to digitize those records, to organize those records, he's going to have peace of mind. And I think he put it best that basically for, you know, what he spends every couple months for detailing his aircraft, which we all know is not cheap. You know, he can have the Bluetail service, so he'll have peace of mind. Everything's backed up. It's organized. He can share it. There's less contact. You know, and then for all the people that are working remote now, it's just perfect for him. And that's only one of our selling, you know, value proposition kind of, you know, tenants. But yeah, I think that there's just that piece alone that, you know, now's the time to do that.
Yeah. So, hey, Roberto, what is the product? What is it you really offer, and what does it really do?
Yeah, I mean, after we digitize the aircraft records, we have a whole ecosystem, which we like to call a content curation hub. And we can handle not only your aircraft maintenance paper records and digitizing them, but we can take in flight logs, we can take in your legal documents, we can take in your financial documents. We've got an open API that connects out there to software of your choice. So we basically know that the commercial world has all these great features and technologies, and they're very expensive. And part of Stuart and I's vision was to take those technologies, because we know them so well from our experiences. We're going to bring them down for pennies on the dollars and bring it to the business aviation and GA world. That's really our mission. Is there's no reason why those big boys can't are the only ones that could use that technology. We're going to bring it down and make it for everybody.
Okay, so Larry, you've been in that space for a long time, you know, bringing mobile technology and records and digital, you know, to the commercial world. I mean, you know, what's your reaction to having this kind of capability down in the business aviation, general aviation world?
Yeah, you know, you're right, Mark, because while I was at Boeing, we actually, you know, did a merger and acquisition with a records company and integrated it into the Boeing tool sets. And it doesn't matter if it's commercial or BAGA, having good records impacts the value of the asset. And if you don't have good records, then, you know, the asset just is not worth as much. And so I think to see you guys bring it on an iPad to the business world, I mean, absolutely, it increases the value of the asset and increases airplane availability as well.
Hey guys, can we break this up into two pieces? If you have an owner operator, or if you have an FBO or an MRO, you know, it's maintaining the airplane, you know, can you give me sort of a breakdown of how it would be an advantage to either of those two parties, you know, one and then the other? So the owner operator and then the maintenance provider.
Yeah, so for the owner operator, it's peace of mind. You know, it's the fact that, you know, if you don't have your records backed up, something bad happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but if something does happen, that you could potentially lose up to 20% of the value of your airplane. So it's the kind of insurance, you don't really need it until you need it. So it's good to have that peace of mind. But also to have things organized. Let's say you want to share things, collaborate, like Berto was talking about earlier. So we have all those tools, and Berto can get into some of the specifics. So that's from an owner operator's perspective. There's that, and then from like say an MRO, you know, an AMP, somebody on the maintenance side, you know, we've got an AMP that's on our advisory board, and we talked to them early on about just some situations where they'll go to do a phase inspection, or maybe just some unscheduled maintenance, and oftentimes they've got to go through and they've got to see, okay, is the 337 there to support that last STC? Where can I get the 8130, right? That related to that MTR. So they can spend upwards of an hour or two, sometimes even longer, searching for things. So it's very inefficient. So if we can be part of that chain and reduce that time when you're searching for things, then they know, because they ultimately have to sign it off, that aircraft off, and return it to service. So so their neck's on the line. Their 145 repair station certificates on the line. So I think that's a good use case there too. And we've got other ones outside, like in the lending world for compliance, on the regulatory side. So we don't just limit it to owners and MROs, but there's other folks in the ecosystem that we know will benefit as well.
Okay, hey, let's
Stuart, that's a great explanation of kind of some efficiency gains, and those are just great examples of efficiency and compliance. I think the other dynamic that's going on now is people don't want to touch records. They don't want to touch a box, right, or they don't want to touch a paper record. And you kind of said it. People can work from home. They can keep their hands to themselves. They don't have to touch a bunch of records that they're uncomfortable from a health standpoint doing.
Correct.
So let's tie this back into sort of the recovery in aviation. Then I want to go off into two different directions. But number one right now, Larry, you brought it up right there, is that, how is, in your guys' opinion, how is going digital right now, going to help somebody, in acceleration of their business, or to make flying easier? Or how does this contribute to the recovery, of aviation right now? How does it make it faster, cheaper, and better?
Well, I think, we've touched on some of this. I think having things digitized, if you've got remote workers, then they don't have to drive back into the flight department, open up the file cabinet to find that specific document. So there's time savings. There's less contact, like Larry was saying. I think that's a big part of it. We talked last week about just some other things that tie to our use cases. So, Bluetail's great because you can have all your records digitized when you go to sell your aircraft. And I've been through that situation before. It can be very laborious. You sit in a room, you got to go through the binders, right? You're always asking questions, you miss things. So this obviously helps that situation. But there's things that are happening now which are getting more, I think, exposure, like virtual aircraft auctions. And heck, we were made for something like that when you think about it. We've got all the tools. So, if you run virtual, I know there's some good companies that are doing this now. We've reached out to them. I mean, we think that that's yet another example where this can really aid in the recovery, because like Berto said earlier, some things are going to be done a little differently moving forward through this disruption. And we've got all the tools to support that.
So, Berto, can we talk about this platform for a minute? So this is a SaaS-based platform. Can you explain to our viewers real quick, what is a SaaS platform, and how does that advantage, your product situation? What is it really?
Yeah, for all you people, SaaS is software as a service, and a lot of you are consuming products like that. Netflix is a SaaS company. iTunes. There's a lot of your software that you run your companies with that you're paying monthly fees. So it's a software piece that's multi-tenant. One of the good things about the way we built Bluetail from a SaaS perspective is it's not just, if you're a flight department and you have 3 or 4 aircraft, you can have one account and look at all those planes, look at all those records. You can have a relationship view within documents. So if you guys have ever seen mind maps before, if you've got a part number and it's related to certain ADs or things that you've fixed, you can literally have a relationship. So you can take one document and go, what other documents are related to that? So the SaaS world brings all these great, expensive commercial technologies down to us for, pennies on the dollar. And it's a simple login. It's all mobily responsive. So you can see it on your iPad, your iPhone. If you want to take a picture of your record with your phone, it'll automatically get uploaded straight into Bluetail. So we've tried to really take a lot of the problem use cases and make it really easy for the owner or flight departments.
Yeah, it looks like it's a really user-friendly interface. Larry, you've worked a lot with mobile products right now. What is your reaction to the interface there?
Well, I think I just saw this interface this morning, and I thought, wow, that's just really clean and organized. And to be able to have it on a laptop, on a mobile device, and on a phone, and have those kind of all interconnected, great job.
So, Berto, what are the platforms it runs on?
The platform, we have it hosted for security reasons at Amazon, AWS. It's FedRAMP compliant, HIPAA compliant, SOC 2 compliant. So we've got nightly backups. We do something really different that a lot of people aren't out there. We track every IP address into the app, so we know who is in the records. There's no way to duplicate. Overwrite a record. An automatic versioning system takes it to the next version. You can't delete records. Everything is archived but not deletable. So that's all because we have it up in the cloud and we're using a lot of the tools that Amazon provides. So it's solid state for, like I said, as we try to bring the cost down to everybody.
How about the
Mark,
run on the client side? Yeah.
Mark, we've talked about kind of three things that are so important for digital transformation. And Roberto, you mentioned all three. Cloud-based, has to be cloud-based, has to be used on a mobile device, and has to have a clean and modern UI. And that's kind of, from what I've seen where you guys are going, you just embrace those three things that are foundational for airlines to be able to adopt this, or operators.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah. Hey, on the mobile side, what are the clients that you support right now today?
It's mobilely responsive, so you can have an Android device or an iPhone device, any of the tablets. So you don't need to go to the store to download it. It's the software itself compresses down with the resolution of your device, so it automatically does it for you.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really interesting. So I see you got a lot of stuff going on. Hey, let me quickly bring this back again to our viewers is that, owner operators, maintenance providers, things like that is that let's just bring this back to recovery and how this helps people. So from a business case perspective, just sort of tell me again, if you're going to sell an airplane, Stuart, what's the value in something like this? How does this really bring, value back to selling of an airplane?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. Again, having been through that process, first of all, I think it limits your buyer pool. If you've got your DOM, you got to put them on an airplane. First of all, that's expensive. They got to fly to, let's say, Florida, sit in a room and spend a day going through records. To me, it seems like you would want as many DOMs and prospective buyers looking at that aircraft simultaneously. So you've got more people looking at it, faster sale, seemingly because you've got the best technology. You may see some things in there, especially if we've got some great search tools. We've got tags and keywords and all kinds of ways of finding specific maybe part numbers or 8130 numbers, things like that. So you can identify problems maybe in advance before the transaction takes place, because you don't want that after the fact, as everybody knows. So I think more buyers, faster sale, better price. So we think that that's probably one of our best use cases.
So you threw a number out. I mean, you said, hey, it might possibly impact the value 20%. I mean, but I know that do you have anything? I mean, why did you throw that number out?
When I say it would impact the value, it's like, if you lose your logbooks, then it can be worse than that, right? If you lose your logbooks, then you got a paperweight, right? So, but I think there's some kind of value quotient, but for having better records, whatever that number is, maybe it's a small number, but I think too that, and Larry, this, that if you've got really organized records, everything's nice. I mean, it's like when you go into somebody's home, that just says a lot about how they've maintained that airplane. I mean, I hear that all the time. So you've got the latest tools, everything's organized. It means, you've overdone it on taking care of that airplane. And I would probably choose that airplane over the one next door that's, got the bird sitting on the top of it,
You're so spot on. And, like we said, it increases the value of the asset. There's just no doubt about it. It increases the value of the asset. whether, as an owner or maybe as a leasing company or, as you transition airplanes, it impacts all those.
Now, you guys also told me that before that you were doing integrations to, other products and things like that. Roberto, what's the capability of doing integrations from this platform to maybe any other platforms that are out there?
Yeah, we've got several out-of-the-box integrations already. We have an open API, so we're actually talking to several other companies in the space that offer services to owners and flight departments. So right now, we are integrated with Google Drive, OneNote, Dropbox, and of course, any shared cloud service that your documents may be at, or you may have things stored. But we also have a little tool that can also take any records you have from other systems that you have, and with the click of a button, upload them right into Bluetail. So we're actually looking at several other integrations, and because we want this to be a content hub. We don't create the content, we just want to curate it, maintain it, and have it right at your fingertips for any use case.
So, Larry and I have continued to promote this concept and idea, that everyone has an IT portfolio. All of us today have an IT portfolio. We have different softwares that we use, whether it's a big company, an airline, or an MRO, or whether it be us personally, and a general aviation or a business aviation company. They have an IT portfolio, right? And so you're not trying to do everything. You're trying to plug into that portfolio, right? How do you think that you fit into the portfolio? There's other products that are really necessary. How do you guys fit into that portfolio?
Well, I think the big one, I think the obvious one is maintenance tracking. Yeah. And I've been real clear when people have asked me that we are not going to do maintenance tracking. I mean, Larry, Mark, how complex that is. I couldn't even begin to imagine, starting one of those companies. And but that said, maintenance tracking, if there's a lot of paper records out there, even if they have maybe their own logbook component, there's a huge need for somebody like us to actually organize that, scan it properly, pull out tags, do it on the fly. So I think that would be a great example of how we could integrate with a maintenance tracking company. That there's a lot of, I don't want to call it dirty work, but in some respects it is dirty work if you've seen some of the places where we've gone to scan records. So I think getting that piece done, organizing that, and with an API on the other side, passing that back in, so then you can do other things with it. You can do all the, MRO planning, inventory management, forecasting, costing, and all that stuff, but it has to start somewhere, and we think we can really play a key role with say somebody like that. And we've got other examples, whether it be a lender or operations software, for dispatch, that sort of thing. There's all kinds of, I think, applicability as this grows.
Hey, Stuart, let me just be a little more pointed than what Mark said. In the maintenance planning space, are you guys, obviously the two biggest players in that space are Camp and Flight Docs. Are you guys working with Camp and Flight Docs to integrate?
Yeah. So let's see. We've talked to. I mean, those are obviously really great name players out there. We've had some preliminary discussions, and we've certainly we would like to integrate with them. And there's maybe a little bit of movement in that area that we can't. How do I do this? You're putting me on the spot. I can't release anything yet. No pre-announcing.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to be too pointed, but those are.
Yeah, no, I mean, Bruce, I think, said it best that we love partnering with like-minded companies. And, those are two really good companies. To the extent that they want to work with us, we don't think that it's competitive. We think there's some joint selling that we can do. And who's going to turn that down, right? If we can bring some deals to you and vice versa, that we think that that's a win-win. And not everybody always feels that way, but we will absolutely work with people that want to work with us. And there's some great players out there. You've mentioned a couple more, and all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, Stuart. Sorry,
okay, well,
you put you on the spot, but
it's okay. But you've kind of carved out your niche, right? And that's why I was going with the portfolio. Yeah. You're not doing maintenance tracking. You're not doing planning. You've carved out your niche and having, really modernizing of aircraft records for the business aviation space. I mean, that's really where you've carved out that niche, right?
Yeah, and Mark, just something on going back to the recovery in this 2 or 3 month period that we've been, a lot of companies have been doing all kinds of different things during this time. And one of the things that Stuart and I really talked about is crystallizing our value proposition and also crystallizing our branding. And, you know, it's been a tough 2 or 3 months, you know, for all of us in the US and all over the world with COVID. But we think that we spent a lot of time thinking and having good conversations and dialogues about, you know, what do we want to be when we grow up, and what is our purpose for Bluetail? And we think we've crystallized it clearer than we've ever had. So a lot of good can come out of crisis.
Well, let me follow up with that question. Let me just ask you this very pointed. It's a different pointed question than Larry's. Okay, it's easier. Is that when you were dreaming up that somebody needs, you know, modernized records management out there? Tell me, why did you do it? What was the demand that caused you to say this is a missing area in the industry?
Let me start, or do you want to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. So no, you start, and then I'll fill in. All right. Go ahead.
So, well, when I left the operator, this was 5 years ago, I was looking at all kinds of digitization opportunities. And because I came out of the training world, I was initially just looking at e-learning. There's some really exciting things happening in e-learning. I'm sure you guys have been watching that, whether it's through animated software where you can, you know, kind of do your own thing, or through a live learning session. So I looked at that, and then through just another individual, not Roberto, we're looking at just the whole manuals, and then that kind of morphed into records. So I've really been looking at it for a while, and as fate would have it, you know, I wound up back in Phoenix 2.5 years ago for another opportunity, and you know, Roberto and I started talking, and then what I'd call kind of a series of kind of strange events. There was all these like pointing signs that you guys need to really kind of do this. So for us being here, and I could give you like some kind of weird examples, but it's just, you know, like when you go for a walk and you just see certain things, it's like, you know, then like a nut falls on your head, and it's like, hey, it's time to do this. And we, about 1.5 years ago, in earnest, we said, you know, let's go make this happen. We can do this. It's going to give us an opportunity to work together again, and you know, and we've had our ups and downs, but more ups than downs, and we've really been enjoying it and having some fun in the process too. Yeah. Hopefully that's obvious.
Yeah. Just to fill in, before Bluetail, I spent some time at an electronic medical records company in the PT space, physical therapy, and actually one of our board members is, I think, one of the best SaaS CEOs out there, Paul Winandy, and he's on our board. And we took a company that had very similar problems in the industry of records weren't digitized, workflows weren't efficient in the software space, and you know, we took a company that was really small and grew it to a really large company, all based on the same principles. And that's what got me excited about the aviation space. I'm coming in here very green, but I saw the opportunity of digital transformation and where we could help owners and flight departments and companies out there to take advantage of all this great technology that's out there. I see billions of dollars in the sky, and then I see some, like you said, the portfolio of software. It's just like, why can't we just make everything visual? You know, everything is not a linear file like in DOS. Let's make the records come to life, make them actionable. And we've got a exciting vision, and we got a lot of work ahead of us. But we think we're gonna disrupt this record space.
Guys, the reason I asked that question is because, you know, Larry and I have experienced this for years, that paper has been the primary, you know, medium to use within, you know, aviation for many, many years now, for as long as I can remember. And really, digital transformation is such an important part. And that's what really Larry and I are all about, is we're looking for opportunities to be able to accelerate this industry and move it forward further and faster than ever before by moving people into digital. And not only the safety aspect of it, but the efficiencies of it, the retaining value of aircraft, but also, you know, just the need to be able to move from, you know, paper into a digital or electronic world. And what I see you have done here, Roberto, is that you've taken the experience from another industry, which is very tremendous. Many times we do that. We see the value in things that have been successful in other places, and you're bringing it into this space here in business aviation. And I want to congratulate you for that, because I think that's really a good move. I think you guys saw the demand and you had the background and the experience to do it, and you're making it happen within business aviation. That's great.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Hey, I see you guys have been featured recently in MRO Business Today and in AOPA. So I guess they've put some press releases out about your product. I guess they've been impressed about it, huh?
Yeah, and we certainly appreciate it. Matt Thurber at AIN also did an article, real nice article, kind of kicked things off. And we're talking to some other media outlets. So, you know, I've been getting razzed a little bit because we're a little overexposed right now.
What is that?
You got to be careful. You don't want to start reading your own press releases, right? Because you sit on your butt and you don't do all that hard work that Roberto just talked about. So it's great, but we've got a lot of work to do. You know, the net of it is that people know us now. You know, we had to start with awareness. So now we've got to take that awareness and we've got to, you know, go and get leads, which is actually happening. It's helping, you know, with our other lead generation activities, making the phone ring. So that's been real encouraging. I mean, that was one of our initial goals.
Yeah.
We had to start the company. We had to get it funded. We had to get the product built. Now we got to get a bunch of customers, and I think we're well on our way to that plan. So,
hey, listen, I was.
There's no time off now.
Hey, I was watching our primary software platform, and for some reason the questions weren't coming in over there. And I glanced at my phone here right now, and we have a bunch of questions that have come in over here. And I wanted to just bring a couple of questions up if I could quick. All right. So here's one of them here is that how do you disinfect paper logbooks? All right. You know, digital software. Yeah, exactly. You know, digital software, signature software is taking off in other industries. And so, yeah. All right. Okay. So Larry and I have been talking about this. Is the concept of dirty fingerprints out there has taken on a whole new connotation. For those of you that may not know this, is that we used to refer to paper records for many, many years as the dirty fingerprint copy. All right. Now today, when we're looking at paper and people touching it, you know, that changes the whole thing. Now, the question to you guys is that with the need to get away from, you know, paper logbooks, all right, and from dirty fingerprint copies, what do you bring to the table here? Can you guys just give a quick response to that? To Brad Elliott, he's the asker of the question.
Brad, he's always been a troublemaker. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, no, I got some good friends on the phone today. So, excellent question. So, well, first of all, you know, the scan, it all starts with scanning, right? And those are your records, those are your baby, and we're probably overdo it in terms of being careful with somebody's records. We scanned a CJ recently. Took us a couple days, you know, with probably 8 boxes worth of stuff. So we locked everything up at night. We wore gloves the whole time. We had an inventory sheet of everything. We audited everything. We put things back exactly like we found them. So you know this, Larry. When you go through binders, people will staple the MTR to the work, you know, to the packing slip, to the 8130. So, you know, you got to take those staples out, put it exactly back. You don't want to disrupt or hurt any binders. You got to go in a certain way. So we're overly sensitive to being careful with somebody's records because we know how important that is. And as we set up our scanning centers, and we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks, we've got a whole regional scanning center strategy we're going to be rolling out here. We will impart that same level of caution in our best practices as we roll these out. We've partnered with somebody on the East Coast that we know is going to do an amazing job for us. Can I say their name? Wait. Yeah, Records Force. And we'll be announcing with them shortly. They've been doing scanning for some 40 years. They've got locations all throughout the U.S. So, again, we will be setting up some very, very, I think, you know, rigid procedures because we know how important those records are.
Yeah, guys, you know, thanks for answering that question. I got a couple other questions I want to throw out here. You know, we get people to join these broadcasts from all around the world. And so it's a little bit hard sometimes to interpret exactly the questions. But I have one here I wanted to throw out there. Actually, we got a guy online from Portugal. And he says with 5G technology coming soon, you know, and digital transformation moving forward, how do you think 5G will impact or become part of your strategy with your electronic records kind of a solution? Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
Faster is better. I mean, just getting access to your records faster. I don't know if 5G will help with the searchability. We're in the middle of working on what we're calling mock search, which I can't disclose right now since it's in our developers are working on it. But it's going to give access to search for a word within 7,000 documents and be able to relate them and tag them with other documents. So that I would assume will help because of the speed, but there's so much going on behind the scenes. 5G will definitely help with speed.
Okay, well, it definitely will give us better reach.
To be at the airplane and have a mobile device and be able to capture a record, whether you're capturing on a device or a picture, and then be able to, to move that really quickly, that's where I believe that's where the impact is.
Yeah, I remember we got a question from one of our customers because we do all the aircraft documents, not just the logbooks. Probably saw we've got a little Campy file folder on the left side. It's called RAM Check. So that's basically all your onboard documents. So that's your registration certificates, your AFM, your weight and balance, maybe some insurance documents, customs information. But the question was, well, hey, if I get my AFM in there, that's like 2,000 pages, and that's a huge file. So having connectivity, if they need to go and research, something that maybe a light went off on the panel, right? And what does that mean? Can't get to the checklist, So just something like that. You were asking about it. And yeah, 5G I think would certainly help in that scenario.
Roberto, you said it, faster is better.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, we have, like I said, we have people from all around the world on this broadcast, and I have a question coming from a planning engineer, and I think it's coming from India. It's coming from India, and his question is that when we bring things like the aircraft maintenance manual into digital format, there's always a need for electronic signature and electronic stamping, and additionally, comment boxes and things by an aircraft maintenance engineer. And he said this would avoid a lot of printout. Now, before you answer that, there's a big challenge between the major commercial aircraft carriers and the smaller operators. I know that the level of documentation coming from the manufacturers is not the same. And so do you have any ability to be able to help the problem that people have with task cards and electronic signatures, or are you downstream from that? Can we just have a little bit of a conversation around that? Because that's one of Larry's areas of expertise.
Yeah, so first of all, just on the feature side, because we would have spent a lot of time just talking about all of our bells and whistles. We do have the ability to add watermarks, e-signature, which is fully compliant with the Advisory Circular 120-78A, covering all that. I think you mentioned stamps. We also have stamps in there. We have the ability, once you've got an uploaded file, could be one page, or multiple, pages in the same file, where you can go in and add comments. There's notifications attached to that. So there is this collaborative piece already with the documents. If the question is more to, are we going towards more like living documents, a la versioning? We've had some discussions in that area, and of course we can only do so much at once. But right now it supports a lot of what I think that question was about. But there's some other things that we'll be building in the future that I think will also be beneficial. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Larry, any thoughts on that subject about?
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit already. It's the integration, right? You guys are really good at records and indexing and all that, but it's that integration with an upstream system to be able to, to get those records and organize them and display them in a way that brings value. So it's that integration piece that's important as well.
So hey, you guys are doing a great job of answering questions on your feet. Thank you. I have one other one which I want to address, because I think it's important to address the difficult questions as well as the easy ones. Okay, and one of them here is that I think because of English here, it's maybe a little bit hard for me to interpret this, but I think the person is asking, is this a theoretical product or is it real? Okay, so can you talk about the stage of development of the product right now, and if you have customers and where you are?
Yeah, so I mean, it's real because we already have customers, and we got some initial customers when we were in beta, just some people that I knew. But now that I'm talking to people that are just have contacted us, and they get it just by virtue of our website. They get the value proposition. I mentioned an example from last week where, I demoed the product. It did exactly what this person wanted, and we'll be scanning their records in the next couple of weeks. And I've got other folks in the pipeline too. And we originally thought that we were going to start out small and just focus on Part 91 small flight departments. But we've had some 135 operators contacting us, and I know there's a level of complexity with dealing with 135 operators. The POI has to approve, the electronic records keeping system and all that, and that's why we're adding resources to support that. So maybe it was a theoretical problem because we had a hunch, a year and a half ago. You never really know until you build it. Will they come? And then you start marketing it. So we're getting some really good response and inquiries and closing some deals. And we haven't really kicked off our full lead generation yet. So I'm cautiously optimistic that it's gonna, we've got some numbers that we put forth for our first year sales goals. We're on track. We obviously launched a little bit later because of the situation, but I feel pretty good about that. So,
well, hey, Larry, one of the things, if I can add to that, is the thing that Stuart and I did before we even really wrote a line of code is we talked to customers, we talked to jet owners, we talked to AMPs, we talked to pilots. And so what we did is we did a mass survey, and we really wanted to find out what their pain points were. And we're going to continue to talk to customers. They're going to guide the product. I can sit here and say, oh, I've got a background at Apple and I know this and all that, but it doesn't really matter. It matters what the customers say and want, and they're going to guide our product. So we think we're off to a great start, but customers are going to tell us where to go.
Yeah, I can tell you from Larry and I, from our experiences, that there's a demand out there for this. All right, for the need to move from paper to digital, and so it isn't theoretical at all. There's 85 to 90% of all the operators out there today are operating off of paper. And so there's a high demand for this kind of a product. And so my personal experience, firsthand, meeting with hundreds of companies out there, is that there's a high demand for this. Hey, one other question here came up. I want to throw it up on the screen, and it has to do. Oh, it's a big question.
Whoa!
Completely. All right. Okay. So listen, it's from Andy Belser. It looks like, but let's take it off the screen so we can see the guys' faces. So okay. Anyway, let me basically tell you what the question was. The question refers to change management. In any business and operation, when we're dealing with digital transformation, we have to deal with the challenge of change management. So moving from one business process to another, and the adoption of enabling technology. What is your perspective on how you help companies to move into a digital world, and how do you manage change management during the process?
Change management as far as what?
Oh, as far as moving.
What part of
to me is process change and technology change. Process change and technology change. So most companies are concerned about the fact that they have processes and they have to change those, and they have to move from paper to digital. How do you help people move? How do you help people move from paper to digital?
Yeah. So I think we do this a lot in any technology that you bring into any company, and it takes people, it takes process, and it's not just all about the technology. So I think you've got to plan for that transformation and get people involved and get their buy-in and move them to the next generation of how they're going to do things, because it's going to be more efficient. It's going to provide, you're going to make better decisions because you're going to have data at your fingertips that you wouldn't have before. So it's not just the technology solution. It's you've got to have buy-in from your team, and you may even need to change a process or two. But it's worth it in the long run.
Great. Hey, listen, we're coming up on the hour, and we wanted to try to keep this within an hour. And so I wanted to start to wrap up the discussion, but there's an important part that I think is we have people out there in the industries that are asking themselves is that, well, what can I do in my business in order to be successful. All right. In this difficult economic time, in these uncertain times of what's happening with aviation, listen, business aviation is going to rebound faster. We're seeing that right now. But even given that, let me start with the two of you, briefly, real quick. Stuart, what advice can you give, as a leader in aviation, what advice can you give to people with respect to, recovery? How can they help recovery within their own business?
Yeah. So I think, for me personally, I've had a lot of experiences, had some successes, had some not so successful things happen. So, and that's partly because, like my dad, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've always liked taking some risks, usually measured risks. So, when things, as things get challenging and difficult, I tell people, and this is a cliche, don't be afraid of failure. Personally, I'm afraid of failure, and it stings, right? If something bad happens, but like other people, I've always used that as my motivation to get back off the floor, and to try harder, to work harder, to be smarter, to stay positive. And this hasn't been all wine and roses this last year and a half getting to where we are. Whether it's getting the product done and tested and getting the company funded and all that. I mean, there's a lot of work, and we've had some successes, and we've certainly enjoyed those. And when we've had some issues, we've talked about it and worked through that. So you just got to keep, you got to keep pressing and recognize that, with that attitude, good things happen to good people with good ideas, and I firmly believe that. So I don't know, that helps.
Great. Hey, Roberto, how about you? What's your perspective as a leader in aviation? What advice can you give to people?
Stuart, that sounds like a Harvard Business Review answer.
Right? So I read it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that Stuart is like the songbird of our next generation, but I would say, I would just say, you gotta, in times like this, you gotta laugh a lot, and don't take yourself too seriously. But Stuart and I talked about, how do we come out of this? It's a very sensitive time for a lot of people, so we have this motto of, coming out punching. And so every employee at Bluetail gets this.
Oh, wow.
So
Awesome.
Rock 'em robot.
We're bringing it back. Hasbro loves us, but we're going to come out punching, and in a good way, and it's a figure of speech. So no hate mail, please. We just laugh a lot, and work hard, and we'll all come out of this fine.
Charge hard. Listen, I tell people all the time is that enthusiasm is success. All right. Is that, leaders that have enthusiasm are going to lean forward and lead our industry. And you guys got enthusiasm. I think you're going to do great. Hey, listen, I'm going to be wrapping things up here shortly, and I wasn't going to do any more questions, but there's one last question that came in that I really felt like I wanted to address. And the reason that I did is because it comes from someone who says, how do you distinguish yourself from other similar products in this same lane? And I think it's a really important question when people ask that is that, how are you different than my other choices? As I'm sitting there, this comes from a helicopter operator, and he's asking himself, why should I consider you instead of somebody else? Can you bring us to a close by giving someone a parting thought on why Bluetail should be considered over somebody else?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll take first stab at it. When we set out to design Bluetail, Roberto actually, to his credit, came up with like a bunch of guiding principles, and we really tried to stick to those guiding principles because we did take a close look at all the indirect and direct competitors out there. So just some very simple things that, it's going to sound, again, cliche, but a simple user interface, a simple user experience. I know we mentioned before, I know you said, Larry, that it looks like a clean design. Well, I found out just how hard it is doing a clean design and making sure that everything works. And then, putting things where you expect them to be. So we really have been focusing on, 90% of our efforts on creating the best product, because ultimately, if we come up against a competitor and it's just like, hey, it's like you do in an airplane, go fly both of them. And you tell us which one you like better. So, if we're not doing our jobs right, then we'll find out in a hurry. But I think that our product ultimately wins by virtue of what we've seen out there. So anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's absolutely great.
You know,
I like
Roberto, you said this, Roberto, you said this already. You guys are talking to customers. You're building a product that you hear. I mean, you know, whether it be a focus group or however you're doing that interaction, that you know, interaction or asking for customer input builds the product that they want and that, you know, sells in the marketplace.
And I know that's what you did at Boeing, Larry, when you created really some leading industry products out there. So that really makes a big difference. Hey, listen, as we start to bring this to a close, you know, we can't answer everybody's questions. There's really a lot of them out there. I wanted you to say that people can continue this conversation with you. If someone wants to reach out to the two of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can certainly go to our website, which is bluetail.aero. There's all kinds of contact forms on the website. We've got an 800 number. You can use that email address and send us. We'll both get those inquiries. I think there's another email, support@bluetail.aero. So there's umpteen number of ways to get a hold of us. You can reach out through LinkedIn, private messaging. So
I like to simplify things for people. So the bottom line is that if they want to catch you, you know, reach out to them on LinkedIn or this address, sales@bluetail.aero.
Correct.
You guys want to continue the conversation, reach out, talk to them. Hey, if you guys want to get in touch with Larry and I, best thing to do is to go out to Google and do a search on hashtag digital aircraft. You'll find everything about what we're doing and previous interviews and things like that. So if you want to continue a conversation with Larry or I, reach out to us on LinkedIn or do that search. Hey, listen, I want to tell everybody, thanks for joining us today. We really believe that business aviation is a critical component of the aviation industry. I personally have been involved in general aviation since I was about 2 years old, all right? I was standing on the wing of an Air Coupe airplane that my dad stood me on, and I guess that was when I got hooked. Larry flies today. These guys are actively engaged in business and general aviation. We believe that it's a critical component of success. Recovery is happening faster in business aviation than in commercial aviation. And if you're a company out there saying, oh no, what am I going to do? Listen, lean in, move, charge hard. Maybe you go out and buy one of those Hasbro punching things, okay, in order for your company to be able to get motivated. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is that we in the industry that are leaders are going to lead success. And it's with great enthusiasm that it's going to happen. And you guys are a company that are very enthusiastic leaders, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your message today of recovery in aviation. I appreciate you guys being here today. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Berto.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
And, Larry, as always, it's a pleasure to be a co-host with you. And hey, we have interviews that we do like this, usually every Wednesday and Friday. We don't have one this Friday, but we bring them to you 1 or 2 times every week. And we're really looking forward to engaging with you more because we are convinced that it's leaders in aviation that are going to drive the acceleration and the recovery. So join us for future talks in recovery in aviation. I wanted to thank you for joining today, and go ahead and keep a look at the LinkedIn comments, and we'll address all the rest of them, the questions that didn't get answered. But I'll close this broadcast the way I do always, and I'll say fair winds and following seas to you. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.